What is up, guys? It is Joe. We're back. We're talking all about the Cats, specifically K-State basketball as they take down KU in the second round of the Sunflower Showdown game in Manhattan. A massive win for the boys to earn their 5th straight win of the season. The boys are all the way back. The team looks different, and I'm excited to talk about my takeaways from the match. Before I do, a quick reminder, hit that subscribe button. It helps out immensely. I saw the other day we're less than 100 subs away from 3,000. Guys, if you haven't heard, I'm sure you have by now if you watch the channel. 3,000 subs, I'm getting a cat script tattoo on the left thigh, and I want to get that done here soon, so be sure to hit that subscribe button because it does help out immensely. But I'm going to jump in right here, right away, and talk about my thoughts about the game, some different pieces for different players, what I thought overall, so on and so forth. But the first thing that comes to mind, guys, it is a really, really interesting outcome. This game felt almost un-Sunflower Showdown-esque, like, especially when the last two games in Manhattan have been overtime bangers, where you've had, massive swings of points and giant plays. K-State comfortably was the better team. They were better than Kansas for the entire game. Like, they led 37 of 40 minutes. I think it was like 37 minutes and 23 seconds of basketball they led. And that wasn't just 1 and 2 point swings. Like, it wasn't just a situation where it's, okay, K-State's up a 3, they play some good defense, now they're up 1 or 2. It was like 12 to 15 points consistently throughout the second half. K-State saw big days from multiple people. I'll read you the stats here in a second, but just an all-around awesome game. K-State 81, KU 73. And I know the final score says it's an 8-point game. Yeah, this game was about a 15-point game for the majority of the contest. The last 2 or 3 minutes, K-State lets off, kind of starts trading just to sit back. You guys hit a couple threes, whatever, but didn't affect anybody considering the spread was in favor of the Jayhawks by about 4. Didn't change much unless you teased a different line and had K-State by 10 or something like that. But K-State gets the job done, has their 5th straight win. You've now beaten 3 top 25 teams in that stretch as well, and you look night and day different. You're an entirely different basketball team than you were literally a month ago, and that is insane. That does not happen. Dudes do not flip the switch like that. Kansas State has found a way to do it, and it's the right guys, the right coaches. Every step these guys take, they're getting better and better. And you see it against KU. Like, this is a game where you were the better team for the entirety of the game against the 16th best team in the country. And I know that this is a down year for Kansas. There's still KU that just, like, it's a repeat of last year where they don't have much spacing, they don't look great, there's not much hustle. It's also the downside of the transfer portal where guys aren't bought in. K-State fans were having the same conversation a month ago. I don't know that a ton of the dudes on KU, like AJ Storr's been a whiff and a half, but the situation is they don't have a ton of dudes that are bought into the culture, and the guys they do have bought into their culture just don't have the talent to compare to certain things like this. Because all in all, Coleman Hawkins, Doug McDaniel, David Gasson, really all 5 starters made you look bad. And in the interest of making people look bad, specifically making defenders look bad, I'll talk about Doug McDaniel here in a sec, but I do want to read this stat to you because it's a big deal. Against AP top 25 teams in Manhattan, doesn't matter the spread, what the situation is. K-State is now 12-3 under Jerome Tang. They've lost 3 games to AP top 25 teams, and the other 12 they've won outright. That is insane. That is awesome. It tells me every single time you host somebody, it doesn't matter the opponent, you have a good shot to win that basketball game. And you got to give hats off to the dudes because, going back and watching the previous 2 matchups, I went on a little bit of a deep dive this morning, woke up a little bit early, started, couldn't get my mind off the Cats, so I just was like, you know what, I'm up, whatever. And I went back and watched both the highlights from the previous 2 matchups. Obviously, the Elite 8 year, you had Keontae, you had Marquise, you had guys making plays all around the court, all over the court, offense, defense, transition. That game still came down to an overtime game where we all know the lob that happened where Keontae goes up over the top of Jalen Wilson. Should have been an and one, doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but an awesome, electric moment at Kansas State. Then the second year, you had Tyler Perry go nuclear in overtime, have the crazy tip-in to send it to OT. Arthur Kaluma hits a big shot. Cam Carter's cooking. Like, these are games that Kansas State understands, hey, it doesn't matter the dudes we have on the court. It's a rivalry game. Throw out the records. We're going to compete our tails off. This year was different. It wasn't a one specific, this is a heroic moment. You remember, everybody on the basketball court looked better than their mismatch. Like, it was a situation where it doesn't matter who gets switched on to you. Doesn't matter who gets this guy. K-State had the advantage at all 5 starting positions, and that's kind of a crazy thing to say. I also don't want to bury KU about this. Like, they're fine. They're just a team that's going through it. Bill Self's struggling like the rest of college basketball in the NIL transfer portal era, but with Kansas State, you had some big-time stars in this game, a lot of people to talk about. Doug McDaniel's the first guy we have to mention, folks. This was an elite game from Doug McDaniel. I've described it as like Marquise Noel-esque control. Like, there was not a moment on the basketball court where Doug looked out of place. Like, he knew what he was doing every step of the way, and even if he didn't at times, he looked like he knew what he was doing, made the right plays consistently, and the stat sheet reflected that. 15 points, a career-high 11 assists in the contest, 4 rebounds away from a triple-double. 15, 11, and 6 for Doug McDaniel, followed by 20 points again for David Gasson, back-to-back 20-plus point games for the Flying Dutchman, 20 and 7 for David Gasson. Coleman Hawkins almost had a triple-double of his own as well, a little bit further than Doug in this sense, but 12 points, 8 assists, 5 boards. Then you had Max with 12, 4, and 2, and Brendan with 9 and 5. A good day from all the 5 starters, and then you had a couple decent minutes off the bench for both C.J. Jones, who I would argue played his best game of the season, or close to it off the bench, and then my guy Moby. Keeps cooking, keeps doing his thing. He's elite finishing. Went up and over 7'2" Hunter Dickinson, just tossed it up and over him. Moby's an athlete, looks awesome. When you have a dude that's 6'6" that can defend a dude that's 7 foot plus, that's a pretty sweet athletic mismatch for sure for Kansas State. But a really good day all around in the box score. Good things for Kansas State. But I do want to expand a little bit on Doug McDaniel, because this was truly an elite masterclass of a basketball game. This was an All-American level basketball game. Doug McDaniel was the best player on the court. And you could say that David Gasson's up there, Coleman Hawkins is up there. You could look at the stat sheet, and I think the best 3 players in the game all played for Kansas State. I mean, you look at it, like the 3 big dudes for KU in this sense. Obviously, Zeke Mayo was relatively quiet, had a quiet 15 points, and that's kind of a weird thing to say because he was such a difference maker in the first game. But, man, K-State just went out there and took care of business, and it was awesome to see. It was nice to see. And obviously, I was still stressed. I'm sure you guys were as well. But, man, when you come out of the second half looking like you did, you go into the first half looking like you did. First play, Doug hits a 3, rips the bottom of the net. Going into halftime, you finish strong. Dave hits a beautiful shot, step back jumper with, 0.2 seconds on the clock to go set it into half. That's the momentum swing. Like, you need that. You already had it controlled, but you're up by 8 at half. You don't just settle and say, let's see what happens. You punch them in the mouth. They did exactly that, and they got off to a good start in the second half, and it looked awesome. It was an awesome brand of basketball, but for Doug McDaniel specifically, like I said, this was a Marquise Noel type game, but the thing I'm starting to notice, and this maybe isn't even necessarily a characteristic of Keese, but for multiple games in this 5-game winning streak, Doug McDaniel continues to make elite defenders look bad. And that doesn't happen all the time. Doug McDaniel is truly one where it's like, if the dude wants to put a move on you, he's going to get to the cup. If he wants to run around you, he's the quickest dude in college basketball. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that upsets that statistic, but Doug McDaniel looks unguardable at all times. When he's locked in, he's doing his thing offensively, defensively, like he's moving the basketball, getting it to the right guys, and that's why you see games like this where it's a double-double career high in assists. But Doug truly made DeJuan Harris, who obviously the 3 first-half fouls were big, and I think there's a lot of discourse from KU fans specifically. Super quick break. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, 63% of the people watching this video right now are currently not subscribed to the YouTube channel, and feel free absolutely to ignore this and skip this, whatever the case is. But those of you that are watching right now and are unsubscribed, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button if you love Kansas State, if you appreciate the channel. It's a great way to support me as I continue to grow on this journey, and it's also incredible to bring more K-State fans in like yourself on a consistent basis to see more of my K-State content. Once again, if you're in that 63% or if you're in the alternative in the 37%, I love and appreciate you. Back to the Cats. Saying, okay, well, DeJuan Harris isn't good. Yeah, I get the stat line looked bad, but boy, Kansas was a completely different team with him on the court. They looked awful in that first half without DeJuan. And so that was a big deal. Shout out to the dudes. You got the game plan right. You attacked the guy in foul trouble. And a dude that really doesn't foul much in DeJuan Harris, you go out there, you take 3 in the first half. You basically foul out of the first half with 10 minutes to go. That was a momentum swinger for Kansas State, and that shows how valuable he is on the basketball court. Though I don't think he has an NBA future, he's a heck of a point guard for sure. This is like back-to-back-ish weeks. Like you had DeJuan Harris, who I think is a top 2 or 3 guard defensively in the country. Taman Lipsey at Iowa State, unbelievable defensive presence. Neither of those dudes could hang with Doug. Doug was unfazed by both. It didn't matter who switched on to him. Doug would get around you. He'd go make the play. You're seeing more and more confidence out of Doug. And it's not that he's doing stuff he couldn't do. Like Coach Sang talked about it and said, hey, Doug's always been able to do this. What he's doing that he hadn't been able to do, he's defending his tail off. This has been like the 3rd or 4th, well, probably even dating back further than that. It's been the last 5 games or so where Doug's had, okay, defensive steal, go out, run out in transition, score a bucket. Like Doug McDaniel continues to impact teams in terms of defense, in terms of transition, pushing the pace, finding the right guys. He is truly playing winning basketball. That's the best way to say it. Not that he needs to go get a double-double every night, but if Doug can keep on this path and continue to improve, because, we've all heard it said, like, he's got more and more to his game every single night, I will be excited to see where this team ends up, 8 games from now. We'll see what Doug McDaniel looks like then. And then even in the next season, I think there's going to be some good things down the pipeline for Doug. But something else I want to talk about with the specific roster makeup, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too early. I don't think the staff wants to. I don't think the fan base wants to. I'm just excited we have good basketball to watch. We're competing. We're one of the best teams in the country in the last 5. But what I got to say every single week shows up. The staff deserves credit for the way they added the 2 big man rotation of of David Gasson and Coleman Hawkins. Like, the way these dudes work together with the ball, off ball, whatever the case is, they are 2 of the best bigs side by side in the country. Like, Coleman's elite. Coleman is his own basketball savant. Like, the way he sees the game of basketball and the way he can pass, score, shoot, whatever he needs to do, Coleman is Coleman. but his ability to work in tandem with David Gasson, you're seeing that showcase every single week. Dave's got back-to-back 20-plus games. Coleman Hawkins has 8 assists, and he's 6'10", 6'11". They have two dudes that just absolutely make defenses look bad, because the second you bring a double off Coleman Hawkins, he's making the right pass, whether it be a 3-ball for Brennan Hausen or Max Jones, or it be a little dink and dunk type play with David Gasson. Like, this team is constructed to win basketball games from an intellectual standpoint, and the fact that David Gasson and Coleman Hawkins are working so well together, like, that is good scouting. That's good basketball. That might just be an added benefit of like, hey, we'll see what the best lineup is. Those two together are awesome to watch. And then you got to worry about the other dudes on the court as well. So really great constructed roster, I will say, in that point. Also, got to love my guy Moby. Continues to be awesome. Continues to be a fan favorite. Coach Tang, just every time he's asked about Moby in post-game pressers, gets a big smile. And he's like, this dude is so fun to watch. Shout out to Moby. Team Moby through and through. But I think the cool thing that we're seeing out of Kansas State, like, you're winning games convincingly. You're not just hanging in there tough and you're figuring it out a way to do it. Like, of each of the last games, and I know Arizona State was a 1-point game, but you're been up by like 20 in each game you've played in the last 5 games. That's including 3 top 25 teams. You're up by 20 or 15, like games that are not close, and you're beating teams that shouldn't be beat on the road, let alone be beaten by 20. You beat Iowa State at home by 19. That's ridiculous. This team continues to get better every single week. They did it to Kansas. That's the 16th ranked team in the country. They do it to Iowa State. That's the 3rd ranked team in the country. They did it to West Virginia. That's the 23rd ranked team in the country. And then you're just taking care of business when you need to. That's what good basketball teams do. 2 last thoughts before I get out of here. What a cool moment for Mike Beasley, for Barry Brown, for J.O., all the different dudes coming back to Kansas State. Shout out TP as well. Saw Tyler Perry running around, but just a cool thing to see the guys come back for the same game. And it's just like that momentum is there. The program is there. And I know Coach Tang's such a new head coach in the grand scheme of things of Kansas State's history, but the fact that you have guys that are so dedicated and loyal that want to come back and support your product, like, it speaks volumes. It's super cool to see Mike Beasley back in Manhattan. I mean, that's one of the greatest college basketball players who ever lived and truly the face of Kansas State basketball. It's just exciting to see, and I loved his reaction courtside. Those dudes were basically, him and Barry were both the 6th and 7th defender on the court because they did not sit down the entire second half, and it was just cool to have 2 legends of the game that, you know, we got to see playing growing up through Kansas State as kids, go out into the world as men, come back and support the next generation of Kansas State athletes. A really cool thing to see. And so I want to give hats off to all the guys making their return and just say thank you for the opportunity, really. And then lastly, it's on everybody's mind. Is this team going to make the tournament? There's a lot of people being like, well, maybe, you know, if we win next game, we'll talk about it. You can talk about it now, folks. The dudes in front of you that are in the Big 12 that are on the bubble should not be compared to you. Arizona State's 3-8 in league play. They're on the bubble. They're a game better than you. UCF's like 4-6. They'll play tonight. They're also on the bubble. BYU's there. They're obviously a positive record in Big 12 play. And I know it's the overall record as well, contributed with that. But K-State's resume stacks up with a lot of the teams on the bubble, and it's going to keep getting better. But the thing I want to say is this. It does not matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what Joe already thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks if you keep winning. If you keep winning these games, just show up one day at a time, win every single day. I know it's the old 1-0 cliche, but if you win these games, you will make the tournament. That's all you can say. 8 games, you go 8-0, you're in the tournament. Now, the question of will we make it at 6-2 or 5-3 or 7-1, all that, leave it up for debate. Don't worry about it now. Just go win the next game every single time you go on the basketball court and you're doing something right. You're stacking up days in the right direction. But folks, that's what I wanted to talk about in today's video. Shout out to Kansas State for getting the job done. Shout out to the staff, to the players, to all the fans that made that such an incredible environment. Another top 25 team coming in on Tuesday. We'll have another big video to talk about with that, folks, but that's going to do it for today's video. And I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day, and go Cats!